I'm Jim Small, editor of Arizona News Service, and I'll serve as the moderator for this forum. All of the candidates who are participating in this event have been provided the questions they will be asked in advance. However, I may ask follow-up questions the candidates have not been provided in order to get a better understanding of where they stand on the issues. The candidates will have 90 seconds to answer each of the questions asked. Now, let's get started. Legislative District 18 is in Maricopa County and covers the Ahwatukee area as well as portions of South Tempe and West Chandler. The two Senate candidates for District 18 are Republican Frank Schmuck and Democratic candidate Sean Bowie. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks, Jim.
So we'll go ahead and get the questions started, I think first with Sean. Again, each of you will have 90 seconds to answer. When the school year started this year, there were more than 2,000 classrooms without a permanent qualified teacher. The Learning Policy Institute just named Arizona as the least attractive state for hiring teachers, largely due to the working conditions and compensation. What policies do you support to address this issue and enable public schools to hire, retain, and support teachers?
Well, this is a big problem, like you said. And here in Arizona, we have the highest teacher turnover rate in the country. A third of our teachers are leaving every 3 years. I have friends of mine who were teachers, who started in the profession, who wanted to do a good job, and they've left because our starting salaries are some of the lowest in the country. Classroom sizes, I've heard 35, 40 kids in a classroom. So we can't expect to keep defunding education and expect good teachers to come to Arizona and stay in Arizona. So for me, I got into this race because education is an important issue for me. I'm a product of the local public schools in our district. And for me, the #1 priority of the legislature next session needs to be restoring education funding. We rank 48th in the country in K-12 spending. So we can't expect to fix this problem by continuing to defund it, by focusing on just passing tax cuts, more money for prisons. Education has to be the #1 priority, because when we invest in education, it's going to lead to a stronger economy, stronger communities, and better jobs. So for me, when we talk about investing, for me, the #1 place for those resources needs to be in the classroom. It needs to be hiring more teachers so we can lower class sizes, and that, I think, is going to have the most dramatic impact on our education system. And when we show as a state that we're going to make a commitment to education above all else, that's going to send a message to educators, to teachers, to students that this is going to be a long-term priority for us. You can trust us to invest in this, and I think teachers will be more likely to stay. So I think it's a big problem, and I think we can solve that by making education the #1 priority when it comes to the state budget, and that's absolutely what I want to do in the state Senate.
Okay, great. Frank, what about you? What policies do you support to deal with this issue?
I'd like to put this issue kind of in perspective. We have about 50,000 teachers in the state of Arizona, and we mentioned 2,000 of them, so that's about 4%. So I think some of the things we need to look at first and foremost is transparency. I think transparency leads to accountability. New York is the #1 state in the nation for funding per student, and not only is it just because of money, but because they have a great program in their seethroughnewyork.net, which basically reveals to the public all government employees, their salaries, their costs, including education. I think competition is a great thing when it comes to education. I think there's a way to improve some of the concerns we have with our teachers, as far as salary, benefits, and what have you. But I think we also need to look at how we do business with teachers as far as their experience versus the seniority system. What I mean by that is we have lots of talented people in other states that may want to come to this state, particularly if we're able to improve our education and our economy at the same time, which I think they're a symbiotic relationship. We have a plan that's to eliminate the Arizona state income tax, and we're going to replace it with a much smaller consumption fee. And in the end, we're going to generate more dollars, and we want to see them get directly to the teachers and the students. The teachers are our frontline employees. That's what needs to be funded first before any administration, and that's the direction I would head as the next state senator.
Okay, great. Frank, you'll get the next question first.
Sure.
Governor Ducey has said that Proposition 123 was the first step in addressing the shortfalls in the K-12 system. What are your ideas for the next steps, and what role will you play in building and sustaining the K-12 system?
I think he's exactly right. Prop 123 didn't go far enough, and I kind of alluded to it in the last question, but I'll do it again and say that transparency is extremely important. I think when we can reveal to the public what people are being paid from district to district and school to school, I think there's going to be some competition, and I think you're going to get the set of eyes of the public looking at education, not just people that are in the know and people that are in legislation, but people are going to say, how come that teacher's only being paid this much when this teacher over here is being paid that much? And how come this administrator is being paid much more? Why aren't we getting the dollars to the front end? And so again, I go back to our plan comes out of Arizona State University to eliminate the Arizona State income tax, replace it with a much more productive consumption fee that will protect people that are on fixed incomes by exempting basic food, clothing, and gasoline. People say, well, you've got to come up with 40%. Look, Arizona funds more than two-thirds, their budget is more than two-thirds of what many other budgets are for education. So we rank about 16th in the United States. And that being said, the highest ranked state only puts 43%. We're putting 35% of our budget into education. So I feel like we're doing a good job, but the money's not getting to the frontline employee, which is the teacher. And we've got to take care of the customer, who's the student and the parents. And to do that, we need to have transparency to create accountability.
Okay. Sean, what about you? What are the next steps following 123?
Well, the governor's right. It should only be the first step. And even with Prop 123 going into place, we still rank 48th in the country in K-12 spending. There are a lot of school districts where teachers didn't even get a raise, or maybe it was less than 1%. So it really didn't have a huge impact. So for me, when we need to look at a long-term strategy. I think too many legislators and too many people at the Capitol are focused on how do I get reelected? How do I focus on the next 2 years? We need to look at the next 5, 10, 20 years. And it's not just K-12 that needs help. I work at ASU, and I see the impact to the cost of higher education every day. We've cut more from our universities than any state in the country since 2009, almost a 50% cut. Tuition has tripled since 2009. A lot of our technical training programs have been cut and haven't been restored. So for me, this needs to be a comprehensive approach. If we want to grow our economy long term, better compete with some of our neighboring states that are making these investments and we're not, it's got to be K-12, it's got to be higher ed, it's got to be technical training. We have a lot of great technical training programs in our district, through the Tempe Union High School District. Those programs need to be strengthened. And finally, our community colleges. I mean, Mesa community colleges in our district, they get zero funding from the state. And that's hurting a lot of these technical training programs that are preparing people for these 21st century economy jobs. So for me, Prop 123 is a first step, and we need to be doing more to invest in education, but specifically investing in the classroom. And like Frank said, making sure some of that transparency and accountability is there, so the dollars are going to where they're really truly needed.
Okay, great. Sean, tell me one thing you would do to ensure that public schools are held accountable.
Great. Accountability is very important. We talk a lot about investment and restoring education funding, but it's important that we know where those dollars are going. So throwing more money at the problem isn't going to solve it. So for me, that money has to go into the classroom. It's working with our communities, our local school districts, the school boards, really making sure that those dollars are going into the classroom and they're going to hire more teachers, to lowering class sizes. So as a legislature, we fund the K-12 schools in our state. So there's a lot that we can do to work with those school districts and those school boards to make sure that those dollars are going to where they're needed. So that's something I would undertake as part of that effort to really restore education funding and get those dollars into the classroom where they belong.
Okay. Frank, same question to you.
Yeah, I just want to respond to his comment about cutting education in half, but then tripling the cost of education. So that's where I would come back to the question of accountability through transparency. We need to see why this is happening. If you've cut funding in half, like he said, and I don't disagree with maybe where the numbers are, because I'm not sure, I haven't looked at those, but if you cut something in half but then triple the cost of it, why this exorbitant additional compounding? And so I come back to the transparency. I think if we're able to show to the public what people are being paid and where the money is going, you know, we have so many more eyes taking a look at what's going on. I fly for Southwest Airlines. We have done some great stuff at this company. I'd like to bring some of the things I've learned about people, about business and success to the legislature. One thing we say on the flight deck is if we have a jump seat or get on board, we'd like to have that extra set of eyes to look to keep us safe. What's wrong with having the extra set of eyes of all the citizens and all the residents of Arizona looking at where our education funding is coming from? Just because you don't work in education doesn't mean you may not have a great idea that may help us go in a direction that makes it better for all Arizonans. The teachers is probably the most important. I've worked through the Southwest Airlines Adopt a Pilot program. I've taught in the 5th grade classroom. I've seen the pressures that are put on our elementary school teachers. And Sean's right, as well as what we've said here, is the younger the child, the smaller the class size should be. And we need to work on that, but we need to have funding to do it. And I think it's important that we look at how we we find that funding. I don't think we take it out of the rainy day fund. I really think, every 10 years we see an economic downturn. George Mason University did a study on the states in the United States and how prepared they are to weather an economic downturn.
So let's get to that question now, actually.
Okay, great.
If you support more funding for public education, how do you propose paying for it?
Well, again, I've said I think by systematically drawing down our income tax and replenishing it with a consumption fee, I think we're going to be able to broaden our base, not of the items that are taxed, but of the number of people that contribute. We have 44 million visitors to our state, but we only have 2.5 million income tax filers in the state. So we're talking about a 22-fold. Yes, not all of them live here 365 days a year, but we have a large number of them that stay here for 6 months or just under it to preserve whatever they have, where they go back and file their state income tax return or live in a different country. So I think by going after income through a consumption fee, and
you're talking about increasing basically generally the sales tax, correct?
Right, it'd be a sales tax on the existing items except for basic food, clothing, and gasoline. However, that protects people on a fixed income. We're not talking about replacing 4.5% with 4.5% of sales income. We're talking about drawing it down 1% a year, bringing up potentially 0.25% a year to ultimately where we would replace by 1 to 1.25 cents. This has come out of ASU. This is the study done by Stephen Slavinsky, the economist, who works in the School of Liberty at the W.P. Carey School of Business. We have some other people on our team that are looking at this. I know the governor's supportive of drawing it down. North Carolina just approved a 10-year plan to eliminate theirs, and they've become the 8th state in the United States. What I was saying before, though, about an economic downturn, which I think is extremely important because we don't want to go through what we went through in 2008 and a little bit after 9/11 that we saw also. But every 10 years an economic downturn occurs. George Mason University did a study on all the states and how prepared they are. Arizona's ranked in the bottom half, but in the top 10 are 4 of the 7 states without an income tax. Take yourself up to 20, and you've got 6 of the states without an income tax. I think there's some merit there, and I think we need to be prepared for an economic downturn so we don't go through what we did. Okay. But remember, we got to raise the tide, education and business at the same time, and we've got a plan to do it.
All right, great. Sean, same question to you. If you support more funding for the K-12 system, how do you propose paying for it?
Well, we have the resources now. I mean, we've made decisions over the last 10 years in our state to continually reduce taxes, to invest in private prisons, and to continually cut education. So for me, it's about electing legislators who are going to make education the #1 priority. I don't want to use all the rainy day fund. I'd use a portion of it, because the whole point of using the rainy day fund and some of the surpluses we've had is to make those investments so we can grow the economy, so we have a bigger tax base. So when that downturn does come, we're in a better position. Last downturn, we were so reliant on the housing industry. We weren't prepared. So the whole point of investing now and making those targeted investments is to make sure that we're better prepared. When that downturn comes, we have more revenue coming in.
Is the point of the rainy day fund, though, to use it to invest in
a portion
in the state,
of it,
or is it to actually be, as like the name implies, a kind of a contingency fund for a downturn?
Well, a portion of it. I mean, we've cut taxes so much. We, as a state, have cut taxes every year, I think, the last 25 years. And we have already one of the 10 lowest state income tax rates in the country. Every state that borders us, except for Nevada, has a higher state income tax rate. California's is 3 times the size of ours. So when I talk to business owners, when I talk to people who live in our community, the state income tax is not a big concern for them. There was an Alliance Bank survey that was just done that asked CEOs, what issue is most important to you when you're looking at investing in an area? And they said the #1 issue was education. Intel is a big employer in our district. They have a plant across the street from where I went to elementary school. And their CEO said several years ago that if he had known 20 years ago what he knew now about our lack of commitment to education, he never would have invested here. Okay. So for me, when we look at growing the economy long term, if we get rid of 40% of the revenue in our budget, for me, that's a risky approach. And when I look at where our state is now in terms of our budget, in terms of our education system, the cuts that we've made, the #1 priority has to be investing in education. And then once the economy is growing and we have a surplus, then we can talk about tax reform.
Okay. I'm going to give one more question. Do for about 45 seconds here to answer this. Tell me one thing the state should do to ensure there's accountability for empowerment scholarship accounts.
So empowerment scholarship accounts are vouchers, and I supported the original intent of ESAs. It was largely for students with special needs who maybe needed a different school that was better equipped for them, so that was something I supported. But now there's an effort in the legislature to expand vouchers statewide, and what we've seen in other states that have done this is it largely goes to fund tuition at private schools for parents that were sending their students there anyway. So it's taking money out of our public schools and it's funding private schools where there's less transparency, less less accountability. The more programs like this that we have, the more money that's coming out of our public schools. So if we keep expanding this statewide, we'll be 50th in investment in education in the next couple of years. So for me, we need to be talking about more investment in our public schools where there is that transparency, where there is that oversight, and make sure those dollars are going.
Okay, Frank.
Arizona is a leader in the nation on ESAs, and a report just came out in October. There's less than 1% fraud with it. About 2,000 students, a little over, about the same amount of teachers that are missing are the ones that they did the audit on to show that. I think, though, if we expand the ESAs, we need to have accountability. I come back to transparency. If you're going to take the taxpayers' dollars, you need to show what you're doing with it. And I think that's the real answer here to improving education in the state. But again, no employer would train someone to do something without them and then have them go work for their competitor. We're seeing that as we subsidize higher education. 1 in 2 students are graduating from our major universities here in the state and going to work somewhere outside of the state. That's not good for Arizona. We need to bring education and business up at the same time.
Okay, great. Gentlemen, thank you both very much for coming.
Thank you.